Hello! So, I finally got around to leveling my Rogue, which is something I had been wanting to do since the Undermine patch came out. And normally, at the beginning, I will tell you what I've done with the class, or spec, and what I've done leveling, just so you have an idea of my experience and my perspective. And if you want to know what I've done between Dragonflight and now in the War Within, go back and watch the last video, because when I logged onto this character, she was standing in that exact same spot on the Forbidden Reach. So I made that video, went over the talents, the poisons, all that, logged off, and then proceeded to do nothing with her, which I suppose is how it goes sometimes. So I have leveled Outlaw, which, still being in Forbidden Reach gear, was a bit. My gear was a bit behind, let's just say, of where it should have been. So I started out doing world quests to get better gear, and then was actually able to queue for not just random battlegrounds, but epic battlegrounds. There are a lot of, or there is a lot of people playing PvP right now, which I can appreciate, because I played the last season of Shadowlands, and that was when the player base dropped off, and there was no one queuing for anything. It seemed like it would take forever, even as a healer, because I played my Mistweaver for a lot of PvP, and well, for all of PvP, anything I accomplished was on my Mistweaver. Usually as a healer you don't have to wait too long, and it was quite a grind that last season. So all that being said, I'm gonna mainly talk about the abilities, kind of my thoughts. Not gonna go over the talents too much, because it's a lot of the same thing we've had for quite a while now. Seems like forever. So, case in point, like Dirty Tricks, Cheap Shot, Gorge, and Sap no longer cost energy. So, you're probably familiar with a lot of this if you've played Rogue, and if you haven't played Rogue, me going over things may or may not have a benefit. You should kind of be playing around and testing things out for yourself, so you can see what I'm using if you want to compare, if this is still within the War Within. So that being said, I'm going to start out with my main criticism, and then that'll segue nicely into some of the changes they've made. So the biggest criticism is with self-healing. You have Crimson Vial, which is nice. It was a nice upgrade from the finishing move they would give you that would consume your combo points and heal you over time. Now I kind of almost wish we had something either more like that or something additional to Crimson Vial, because this just does not do the job. I am in full. I had a set of PvE gear, and now I'm in a full set of PvP gear. So I mean, I'm decently geared. I've got a couple trinkets that I was able to buy with Conquest, since I've been able to do random and epic battlegrounds. So, and then everything else was just the honor set. And most everything is upgraded, I think, except for like 2 pieces of gear. So everything is maxed out. And I'm still struggling a bit. I was, even with my full set of PvE gear. So it doesn't work terribly. I just think they need to make some sort of a change. They either need to reduce the cooldown or increase the amount that it heals you for. One of the two. And that's even with Iron Stomach, which increases the healing received from Crimson Vial, healing potions, and health stones by 25%. So my goal is to try to get Leech, which is kind of a hit or miss because Leech isn't on everything. But you do have Leeching Poison, which adds a leeching effect to your lethal poisons, and Shadowheart, which increases your Leech by 2% while stealth. So it's something. But definitely there are other DPS classes that have a better self-heal. I was even thinking perhaps more to the extreme, like on my mage, Ice Block will heal. And does a better, you can heal your whole health in the time, in the duration of using an Ice Block. However, Ice Block has a longer cooldown, so you kind of want the healing to be greater in order to make it worth using. But still, it was just kind of an amusing thought that a mage would have better self-heal in some description than a rogue would. Okay, so I finished the video and realized I didn't go over poisons. And it's relevant to talk about poisons because I took a tropic poison, which is a talent, and it has a chance of reducing damage the target does to you by 3.6% for 10 seconds, which I think has been a benefit at times when my health has been rather low. So it definitely, I would say, has contributed to me staying alive. With that being said, so I have 4, so you basically have 2 for PvE and 2 for PvP, so 1 lethal, non-lethal. So instant poison, which does damage, and a trophic poison would be what I use for PvE, and wound poison, which does damage and reduces all healing received, and crippling poison, which reduces movement speed, is what I use for PvP. So, that being said, you may notice that I don't have Shadow Step. I did have Shadow Step in Dragonflight, so they did away with it. The other 2 specs, I believe, when I looked, still have it. Outlaw combat, which is what Outlaw was before they made their changes. It was never really a PvP spec, so bear that in mind. It was more just your straight kind of DPS spec. It wasn't quite as heavy into the stealth and control with the stuns and everything that the other 2 specs were. So, Shadow Step was something that they had added to Outlaw. It wasn't something that it had very often. I think the only spec that had it when I started playing Rogue was Subtlety, I want to say. Or Subtlety was the spec everybody played before they went leaning more into like the shadow aspect of it. It was a bit more straightforward, and then Assassin was a bit more complicated. They both essentially did the same thing. They both were heavy with stealth abilities and control and all of that, but Subtlety definitely was the more kind of default. You had DPS from what was combat then, but yet you still had some of the stealth of that it shared with Assassin, so it was kind of a middle of the road spec that everybody played. So in place of that, we ended up with Blade Rush, which basically works like a charge with a thunderclap effect, is the best way to describe it, and it generates energy instead of a combo point, which I thought was interesting. I I don't have any trouble with energy regeneration. There are quite a few things that increase energy. Yeah, I mean, you have Adrenaline Rush, increases energy regeneration by 30%. Your offhand attacks have a 50% chance to grant 10 energy. Of course, Thistle Tea increases maximum energy regeneration by 100 and energy regeneration by 10%. Yeah, so you get the idea. There's plenty of things that increase your energy. I've had no issue with that whatsoever. And there we go. Blade Rush is a talent, so you don't have to take it. It is one of the few AoE abilities that you have. So I have Blade Rush, Killing Spree, and Blade Fury, and that is it. So at first I wasn't sure if I liked it. In PvP it's actually quite nice because when you end up in kind of a melee, people are jumping around, you can kind of lose track of your target. So, or if you're trying to use like dispatch or between the eyes or something, it might tell you like target's not in front of you. You can actually use Blade Rush. It will charge the target, and then you can use your finishing move. So, I do like that. That is quite helpful. I do like that quite a bit. So that's kind of how I've used it. Is either for the AOE or to kind of focus a target in PvP, basically. From there, the next major change would probably be with Killing Spree. So they've changed it. It's a finishing move now that does AoE damage. And it definitely needs some more balancing. The first thing that I noticed was the cooldown of 3 minutes is way too long for an AoE ability. If you have an AoE ability, you're going to be using it quite a bit, most likely. It's going to be one of your more frequently used abilities. They changed Blade Fury a while back, so it no longer toggles on and off. It just functions as an ability, so it does damage itself to up to 8 targets, generates a combo point per target, and then causes your single target to strike up to 7 enemies for 40% of normal damage for 13 seconds. So it's not great. I preferred it when it could be toggled on and off, because then you could kind of tailor it to what you were doing. The other weird thing with Killing Spree is that it will, being a finishing move, it will consume combo points. It will also generate combo points. So what I've started doing is using Killing Spree, using Blade Fury, and then using Dispatch, which is not as much AoE as you would think it is. Because bear in mind, Blade Fury is only doing 45% of normal damage, but that does do a decent amount. The problem is, then everything's on cooldown. So Killing Spree has 3 minutes, Blade Fury has 30 seconds, you're trying to generate combo points, so it's kind of a once per, if you're in PvP, it's maybe a once, maybe a twice in combat kind of thing, depending on how long you're in combat, if you're fighting over a base or a flag or something. The damage is fine. I actually think this is one of the few abilities. They could probably knock the damage down and maybe reduce the cooldown. Or the one major drawback with this, when I set everything up and I started using it, it wasn't doing anything, and I couldn't quite figure out why. And then I actually read the tooltip. It only has an 8-yard range. I don't know if you realize how small an 8-yard range is. You basically have to be standing in front of the person. That is super short for an AoE ability. I don't know what the point of that was. So either increase the range, lower the cooldown, lower the damage, something. This definitely needs to be balanced more, because in its current state, it is like a once per combat ability to use, and at that point, I would actually prefer to take something else. I'm just not sure what else to take. I've really been eyeing Ghostly Strike, but it has a 1.5-minute cooldown, so I don't know how beneficial that's going to be. I do like what they were trying to do with Killing Spree. I'm a little disappointed they changed it to a finishing move, but I mean, for what it is, it does work well. It just definitely needs balance. The cooldown, the yards, the damage, like, it just does not work together very well from what I have found. And then going back to healing for a moment. So, like I said, Crimson Vial, it tries, it does its best, but it is not the end-all solution. That being said, I have started using Evasion and Feint more, and that works well. But again, Evasion has a 2-minute cooldown, and a lot of things can happen in 2 minutes in PvP or in PvE. So I went to the new zone, Koresh, to do some world quests, because you have to upgrade your PvP gear with Valor Stones for some reason. And so I was trying to do some quests, and a lot can happen in 2 minutes. So Evasion is definitely helpful, the increased dodge is definitely helpful, but a lot of things can happen in 2 minutes. So part of my kind of swapping talents around, I had Sting Like a Bee. Enemies disabled by your cheap shot or kidney shot take 10% increased damage from all sources for 6 seconds, so that seemed pretty good for PvP. Swapped it out for Float Like a Butterfly. Relentless Blades now also reduces the remaining cooldown of Evasion and Feint by 0.5 seconds per combo point spent. So that helps. Doesn't help as much as I had hoped, but it does help. Relentless Blades finishing moves reduce the remaining cooldown of many rogue skills by 1 second. So I'm not sure if it's 1.5 seconds or if it's just 0.5 seconds. Exactly. I don't know if it adds to this or if it's just a separate effect on its own. Affected abilities: Adrenaline Rush between the eyes, Blade Fury, Blade Rush, Ghostly Strike, Grappling Hook, Keep it rolling, Killing Spree, Roll the Bones, Sprint, and Vanish. So there was that. There was also more simple changes. Didn't end up using Blade Fury as much as I thought. So I had Precise Cuts. Blade Fury damage is increased by an additional 5% per missing talent below its maximum. So Dancing Steel adds 3. So it does 8 with the damage that Blade Fury does, and then up to 7 with making your single target and AoE. Single target attacks AoE for 13 seconds. So swapped that out for Taken by Surprise. Haste increased by 10% while stealth, and for 23 seconds after breaking stealth. So 23 seconds is a fairly decent amount of time. And remember that haste increases energy regeneration. So that's also helping. So as I said, you have plenty of things that help with your energy regeneration. That won't be an issue. So those were some more kind of simple, kind of straightforward, kind of trial and error, see how they work talents. There was one more kind of talent that I kind of swapped around that gets a bit more into kind of theory crafting, and that was with Deeper Stratagem. So again, it's an ability we've had forever. Gives you an additional combo point, allows your finishing moves to consume an additional combo point, and increases damage by an additional 5%. We also have Devious Stratagem, which does the exact same thing. So you could potentially end up with 7 combo points to spend. That is almost too much, which seems odd to say, but that is almost too many combo points. Part of what makes Rogue is being able to do things quickly, and that just was far too time consuming, I felt, to try to generate 7 combo points. The other thing was not everything consumed 7. Dispatch, Between the Eyes, and Slice and Dice did. Of course, Kidney Shot did not. It still only consumed 5. So that would have been the one that I would have wanted additional combo points for to begin with. You can spam Dispatch fairly easy. Between the Eyes is doing damage over time, so that's not something you're going to want to refresh necessarily, because that damage doesn't stack as far as I'm aware. And Slice and Dice, you have to kind of watch, because if you use if you use the maximum of 6 and then you try to refresh it with 2, it won't do anything. Kind of the same effect with Roll the Bones. You can get a haste buff, an increase to your attack speed. And if it's better than Slice and Dice won't do anything. So this kind of becomes a useless ability depending on what else you have active, which is really weird. Discovered that in Dragonflight, and I'm pretty sure that's still the case. I've still pressed it, because this is always kind of the go-to ability you can use when you don't know what to spend your combo points on and you don't want them to go away. And yeah, I've had it not work several times now. So, trying to replace Shadow Step and wanting something else for stealth, because again, Outlaw's not really a stealth heavy kind of spec compared to the other two. All I have is Ambush, which just does damage, generates 3 combo points, which is nice. Cheap Shot, which stuns. I'm almost positive used to award 2 combo points. It's a baseline ability now, so I'm pretty sure it only awards 1 for all 3 specs, which is a bit disappointing. And then I ended up taking Gouge, so I ended up taking the combo point from Deeper Stratagem and just putting it into Gouge, which I normally don't care for, because it has the restriction that you must be in front of the target in order to use this, which for a rogue, you're almost always behind your target, so it's very, very rare that you are in front of your target. That being said, I have tried playing around with this in PvP. I do use it more than I thought I would, especially in situations where if I tried to, take back a base or something, and I ended up having to use Vanish, and if somebody else rushed in, then I was kind of able to use Gouge in those situations, or maybe tried to use it at the beginning if I was trying to take back a base or something. Because with Ambush, Cheap Shot, and Gouge, that would be 5 combo points, so I could get the full effect from Kidney Shot. As it stands now, I'm getting about 4, which is not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. I tried taking Subterfuge, which allows you to use your stealth abilities after stealth breaks. Has 2... can take up to 2 combo points. I only have 1, so it only lasts for 3 seconds, which is plenty long enough. Because you're getting the initial ability, which breaks stealth, and then 3 seconds after to use other abilities, and you don't have that many to use anyway. I took the combo point from Shadowheart, which increases Leech while stealth, and put it into Subterfuge, thinking I could maybe do like a Shadow Dance kind of thing. That did not work. So as you see, I put the talent point back into Shadowheart. So for the moment, I'm just going with Gouge. Again, I'm kind of thinking about maybe trying to use Ghostly Strike, but the cooldown just I don't think is going to work for PvP. A lot of the bottom of the rogue talents aren't actually abilities; they're just passives. So yeah, I would kind of like. I've kind of been thinking about maybe trying to take Without a Trace to have a second use of Vanish. Again, just to try to do like a Shadow Dance kind of thing. One charge is fine. I don't have any issues with that. In PvP, you're either going to live or die. And in PvE, it's not really that much of an issue. And I am a Night Elf, so I do always have Shadow Mend if worse absolutely comes to worse. I've also been looking kind of at Cold Blood. Increases the critical strike chance of your next damaging ability by 100%, so that might be something to look at. As far as the stats go, what I was doing is trying to put everything into Mastery, because your main hand attacks have a chance to trigger an attack with your offhand, which does pretty decent damage. And then I was trying to put everything into Haste, which I think I may have lowered my critical strike a bit lower than I intended to. Because if we look at Sinister Strike, it has a 35% chance to hit an additional time, making your next pistol shot half cost and double damage. Now, that is important because of Quick Draw, which again is an ability I think we've had since Warlords when they changed combat to Outlaw and added in pistol shot. Half cost uses of pistol shot granted by Sinister Strike now generate 1 additional combo point and deal 20% additional damage. And that has not been proccing as much since I got my PvP gear and focused more just on Mastery and Haste. So there are abilities that do seem to base their when they have like a chance to do something like this, that do seem to base it on your critical strike for some reason, like in the background. So I don't know if I've just been unlucky, because it seemed like you'd always get pistol shot before. It wasn't an ability you had to wait too long for. Like, it procced often, and you need that additional combo point because Sinister Strike only generates 1 each time it strikes. Pistol Shot only generates 1, so there's really, other than Sinister Strike being a melee ability and Pistol Shot being a ranged ability, there really is no like right way or wrong way to use these. And yeah, I mean, you want to try to generate as much as possible. Again, Blade Rush doesn't generate a combo point, it generates energy for some reason, which is kind of bizarre to me, but okay. So yeah, I mean, it's not terrible if you keep Roll the Bones up, so you have your enhancements up, and you keep Slice and Dice up, you know, when you're able to. It's not too bad, but it just doesn't seem to proc as often. So I think it's because of the critical strike, so I'm going to keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I've been trying to, like I said, stack Leech, so there's my 4% Leech, then if I go Stealth, then there's the 6%, so that's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. If I could get like 10% Leech, I could, along with Crimson Vial, it would probably work pretty well as a self-heal. But Leech is something that's found few and far between on gear. It's just kind of a bonus stat that pops up, and it's really more intended for tanks. At least that was the way it was kind of presented when it was first entered into the game. Aside from that, did want to also mention, so I took Thistle Tea and was a bit confused at first because it had the text at the bottom. So it restores 100 energy, mastery increased by 14% for 6 seconds. When energy is reduced below 30, drink a Thistle Tea. So I thought it was just kind of a flavor text just to kind of tell people, kind of give them an idea of when to use it. No, it actually is a passive. It will actually trigger itself if you fall below 30 energy, which is kind of nice. So I kind of like that because I kind of felt bad because I never really use it because I never really have issues with energy that much. But with it being able to trigger itself, that is a very nice nice buff there. So and then as far as I think that was pretty much everything worth mentioning, everything I wanted to mention for the talents. And then for the hero talents, just to kind of quickly go over them. So you actually have two viable options. It's not like some classes or specs where everybody just kind of takes one by default. So Trickster is basically a passive set of talents that adds additional damage to your attacks. Fatebound, however, is a little bit more interesting. You flip a coin when you use a finishing move. Heads increases the damage of your attacks by 10%, lasting 15 seconds or until you flip tails. So heads would be a skull and crossbones. Tails is 2 swords crossed. Tails deals cosmic damage, because we're in that patch now, to your targets. Each time the same face is flipped in a row, heads increases damage by an additional 2%, and tails increases its damage by 10%. So there you go. So that has been quite fun to play around with. I've seen both of these taken, so I think both of them are a fairly viable option. I could say the same thing for the specs in PvP. I've seen all three pretty well represented in PvP, which is kind of nice. As I said, Outlaw or Combat, as it was back in the day, wasn't really a PvP spec that often. It was more of just a straight melee kind of damage spec. So it's good to see at least it's more of a viable option now. That being said, as far as the rotation goes, so as I said, I try to use Gouge when possible. Otherwise, I will use Cheap Shot, Ambush, and then Kidney Shot. And then usually by then, Subterfuge has broken. So then we can go into the regular rotation. So again, try to use Sinister Strike until I get the proc for Pistol Shot. In PvP, I tend to use Pistol Shot more just because it's a ranged ability. It's just easier to use. And then when I have a finishing move available, I'll use Blade Rush and then Dispatch, most likely. Try to keep Roll the Bones up. Try to keep Slice and Dice up. I realized that Outlaw Rogue kind of plays similar to Enhancement Shaman in that if you don't have any of your enhancements up, so if you don't have any of your imbues up that you have for Shaman, you will still do damage, but you will feel like you're missing something, basically. And then you'll realize you don't have your weapon imbues, and then you'll use those, and then you'll start doing more damage like it feels like you should be doing. And it's the same thing with Rogue. If you don't use Roll the Bones, you will notice it. If you don't use Slice and Dice, you'll kind of notice it. As long as you have energy, you can use an ability, so it's not as noticeable, but you will notice it. You'll definitely be better using it than not. And then, as far as using Between the Eyes, I kind of go back and forth. Dispatch just does direct damage. Between the Eyes does damage over time, so it just depends on the situation. You know, obviously if it's a rare or something, as I said, I was in the new zone, ran around, killed some rares, so I think I used Between the Eyes at least once. So, pretty much keep Blade Rush on cooldown in normal circumstances in PvE. And then start to go through Sinister Strike. Again, trying to get that proc for pistol shots. And then just Dispatch pretty much is the go-to finishing move that I'll use. So, and yeah, I think that was pretty much it. Also started using Adrenaline Rush more, just as kind of to do just to get the increase energy rate, maximum energy by 50, your attack speed by 20. So just to kind of get kind of a burst damage in certain situations, because I know my health isn't going to last out too terribly long. It did also take Shiv just to have an Enrage, something that would remove Enrage effects, which is helpful in PvP and PvE. And yeah, so there you go. Might switch over to one of the other specs at some point in time, because I don't really have as much control abilities as I would prefer on Outlaw, but for the moment I've been enjoying playing it, so we'll see. I haven't done any rated PvP yet, so haven't played around with the new solo queue for rated or anything yet, so I'm kind of curious to see if that's an option for a PvP or if it's still better just to kind of get into a 10v10 group. There have been quite a few pre-mades in just random battlegrounds, so if that translates over into rated, which I suspect to some degree it will, it might be better just to do 10v10, in which case I might switch over to a more proper PvP spec that has some control. And I seem to remember trying to play Outlaw once before in PvP, and that was the problem. It wasn't so much the abilities, it was just the lack of stealth abilities and control and things like that. So yeah, so there you go.